about it, but Aphelios being hovered here for Ryze instead.
I mean, with the Lucian locked in here, the Aphelios... Honestly, the Aphelios has almost become the meta pick right now in the LPL. It just feels like every AD carry is kind of leaning back on that when the Zeri and the Kalista are taken out. Even when the Kalista is left on the board, teams are tending to go and say, right, the Aphelios is fine into that matchup. We're happy to go with that particular setup. So, but LGD, going back to an odd favorite, we did say that the Lucian Nami has had counters, but some of those counters have very much been banned. The Renata, the Zeri, the Kalista, all been taken away here. The Aphelios should do semi-decently, but not until a couple of levels in that laning phase.
Yeah, I mean, the Aphelios would definitely be on the back foot as soon as you hit level 3 from Lucian Nami. That's where they really start to come online. You get full access to your kit, and just the added damage that you can get from all those extra procs from the Nami as well are going to be fantastic. So, we'll have to see how it goes. I want to see what jungler we're going to get here for Shadow, though. Lee Sin has been kind of the fallback for a lot of people when they're up against the Wukong. Although Wukong does have the Cyclone, you can still do a good amount of like resetting the fight when Wukong tries to engage. But I will say Shadow's currently 0-2 on the Lee Sin, so may not be feeling massively confident on the Lee Sin at the moment.
Maybe not feeling the most confident as we do see the Ahri locked in here for YeG, so not quite going with the Galio this time around. Still a very good facilitator pick if it can get out, get those pick-offs, you know, on the side lanes, influence those, you know, small little corners of the map where they can't see you. That is where the Ahri can do their best. And now BLG, they kind of have a choice right now of you lock into your support, you try and just match the jungle, or sorry, the mid lane. That's where you're at right now. It looks like they're going to look for a very old favorite of Chris, the old Thresh master himself, as it is going to end up being, yeah, locked in and loaded. So they've got the Thresh Aphelios, a very solid combo. Obviously, before Thresh hit a multitude of nerfs, he was kind of the go-to pairing for Aphelios.
And the reason is because it keeps Aphelios super safe in lane, and especially against an aggressive lane like this, where BLG are looking to scale into the late game, it makes sense to have the Thresh just to reposition the Aphelios, especially when you're looking at potential dive come through from Ahri, the tidal wave from the Nami. There's just a lot of things that Thresh's Lantern can try and bypass on LGD side, plus, I mean, Crisp is an absolute beast on it, but now as we start to come through, you can see that BLG going to be looking to ban those junglers because Shadow hasn't picked anything up. So I feel like you take the Lee Sin, you also take something like the JinJiao away here, or even the Viego, and you're kind of left for Shadow in a bit of a box situation. And for LGD, they're a squad now, at least with the composition that they have, that want to play heavily towards that mid game. So I think something like the JinJiao ban, I think would fit a lot better, and try and remove any sort of late game, or sorry, any sort of mid game spiking junglers or early game spiking junglers from LGD's hands.
Well, yeah, as I said, the early spiking junglers being taken out there. You do technically have things like the Volibear, but not quite sure how comfortable the side of LGD will be feeling to take that particular pick. But with the top lane bans coming in here, I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe a Camille come out right now. You still have the Camille Galio combination here for BLG, which would fit very nicely with their kind of Wukong combination should they want to go for it. And of course, Bin, if you watched anything, would have been a massive Camille player. But no, they go for the LeBlanc instead. So still got that option available to them. And Icon is no stranger to the Galio if they decide they want to go for it.
I think it's the Sylas. Like, it's a really good matchup into the Ahri. You can't really get pushed to the lane. Sylas, honestly, I think is probably one of the strongest mid lane champions that are actually in the meta at the moment, because the nerfs to Grievous Wounds, durability patch, basically gave him tons of survivability in team fights and in the laning phase, and his whole kit is about, you know, delaying and drawing out the fight as long as possible so you get more spells off and more procs to your passive. So this works out super well now with the Sylas.
Fearness going straight for the Fiora blind, saying, look, whatever you take into it, Bin, I am happy to go with. So very confident here from Fearness to try and put that up as a top lane, as blind as it is. LGD kind of leaning towards either the Viego or the Volley, are going to lock in the Volley at the end of it. So LGD, they've got some very good early game power right now. If they can get this snowball going, it could be impossible for BLG to stop.
The problem is they don't really have ways to play into that mid-game power, though, when it gets to the mid-game. Because the biggest thing that you need when you have these mid-game spiking compositions is a way to start fights so you can lend yourself into that pressure. But when you've got like a Nami, her ult is more kind of as a defensive tool, it works better. Volibear, not very consistent at starting off fights unless he's able to find flanks, because he just runs into players and you're up against things like the Thresh, the Wukong, these sorts of things. So it can actually get really difficult for LGD to start fights. So I'm actually not the biggest fan of the Fiora, and especially when Jax is available. Jax is considered a counter pick to Fiora because a lot of the power that Fiora has in lane or in these 1v1 duels is how she uses her riposte. But Jax holds all the power in that matchup because of the counter-strike. He gets to dictate when he wants to use it. So it's kind of a look of the draw here for the Fiora as to when she managed to get the riposte, if it lines up when the counter-strike is going to hit. So I think it's definitely going to be a bit tough for Fearness in that topside matchup, and now you don't lead into kind of playing towards the rest of your composition. So I'm just not the biggest fan of what LGD have gone for.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I lagged out just for an ever so second there. I think the Dagatron did take over my screen there.
I'm trying super hard.
You're trying super hard. You got to fight him, Dagda. Fight him. Keep him away from this one here. But yeah, I think honestly, I think I'll look at what BLG have built up for themselves. I think they are very, very set and, you know, kind of good at what they're able to do. The Wukong and Jax have very good early kind of priority as well. Even the Wukong Sylas, that 2v2 in the mid lane, is very, very potent. And if they can just get Ryze to scale up into that 2 items, 2.5 items, slowly getting up to that big Aphelios spike, that's where this game gets very scary for LGD, because like you said, the Fiora doesn't really have an incline to get in on any of these fights. It really does feel like you would be relying on BLG to make some very egregious errors, which in fairness isn't exactly uncommon for them this split. But we'll have to wait and see. No more hypotheticals. We're going to just wait and see how they all end up fanning out. We are jumping onto the Rift for game 1 of this best of 3. And already there's a ward here from the side of BLG. They recognize that LGD, obviously in scrims or some kind of scouting information, that they know that this is going on. And JinJiao knows there's a ward.
I mean, he's just going to chill there, but it does mean that BLG gets moved into the top side to get some vision control down and then start this game out with full information as to exactly what Shadow's going to be up to. From BLG's though, I like the fact that we kind of got a lot of this skirmish power coming through in the early stages with Icon, with Con. Because a lot of what we talked about was like Icon trying to be a little bit more proactive on the map. Con as well, wanting people that can work with them when it comes towards invades and these sorts of things. So I'm curious to see now how these two guys are going to link up. They will be on the back end of the mid-jungle 2v2. LGD is definitely a lot stronger when it comes to that regard, but we'll have to see how they're going to try and manage this as the game goes on.
It's all about managing and containing the the Lucian and Nami combination. The Aphelios should be able to keep some semi-decent distance with the Calibrum at the start of the game, but like you said, once those guns start to rotate, you start to figure out where you want to go with it, and that level 3 becomes very, very scary. But for the moment, Ryze, you're going to have a tough time in the bot lane, but if you can survive it, you're in for a pretty decent setup, as we can see them just kind of using the power already with the Lucian and Nami, saying, look, you can't even walk forward onto this because you just don't have the CC available to you to try and trade us back.
I mean, when you get to late game, well, not so much mid game, but like late game fights for BLG, Ryze is going to have a field day. He's got so many bodies in the way. Crisp is there to help him reposition, even not including the fact that he's a Gale Force. And there's just so little engage on LGD that you really have to worry about here that it makes things dead easy. So LGD really need to get the ball rolling early. And I feel like a huge amount of that, I was going to say, is trying to play through the mid lane. See if you could unlock Yeji, start to lean in towards the spot side. But it looks like Shadow might just run into Khan.
Well, the Gromp will give him back a hell of a lot of HP. The stun won't land as the decoy is there and available. Shadow will have the early priority here, and with bot lane pushing and mid lane, I feel like Khan's going to have to go for a smite fire just to completely give this one up. There's too many members of LGD here.
And he can't even go for his wolves, which would be the usual kind of response, to just take that and then run back up towards topside. But because he knows that G is in the vicinity as well, he's got to completely abandon his bot side jungle. So Shadow kind of coming in to bully the new guy, it feels like a little bit.
Yeah, I gotta say, here we are. You kind of have to respect welcome to the LPL, as you're not gonna have the exact same matchups you have always known in the LDL, but Fearness actually keeping the wave in a pretty great state for LGD. Terrible for Bin, because he really would have loved to have the crash on that one there, but he's gonna have the TP back straight away, and immediately you can see that because Khan lost his blue buff, he immediately circles around, gets himself in a position to be able to trade it back as well. But Icon needs to be a bit careful. The wave's pushing in, and again, another wave state where he really, really wants it to crash, but just can't risk going too far forward.
Yeah, Yeji should be able to get that freeze, which is going to be painful for Icon. And that's the problem, as you said, with the mid jungle not being particularly strong on BLG's side. I think LGD have been doing a great job of using that fact to get in, steal away some comps from Khan, and now set up a nice freeze for Yeji to make sure that Icon isn't able to farm effectively. So at least at the early game for LGD going pretty nicely. We have to see if they're going to be able to continue this pressure now, especially as pretty much across the board, all their lanes should be starting to win, at least in mid and bot.
Doing their jobs, doing how we expected these lanes to go, and of course BLG surviving at the moment. It's only a couple of 100 gold lead at the moment, as we see Icon. They're just trying to keep tabs on where Shadow is going. That's the one thing I will say about BLG. Yes, they are in unfortunate situations in a lot of the times, but they are keeping good tabs on where Shadow is going. The Volibear early game, very powerful, but if you know where he's coming from, can't really have the same level of impact that he probably would like to have.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, as long as he's able to just, well, shadow his lanes, he should be relatively okay. Yeah, I know. Yeah, he is able to get control mid. Look at bot side here. Like, this is what I mean, is like you just play around the fact that you have presence on the bottom side of the map, and Assum and JinJiao can just bully this lane regardless. Massive CS lead already opening up there. They're starting to get turret damage as well. Like, this is actually perfect for Shadow. And the thing is, you can't really break this, and this is what I was talking about, like how important the mid jungle is for this sort of situation, because traditionally the way you try and manage this would be like Khan playing in towards this bottom side, trying to help out with Icon. But if you look at the timing windows that LGD are playing around, yeah, G is already pushed in mid. He's off the map. You can't actually try and protect this bottom side because you always are at risk here at BLG of it turning from a 3-man versus 3-man into a 3-man versus a 4-man. And that's where it can cause so many problems for LGD.
And Bin not quite sure exactly where the Volibear is. Really wants to try and, you know, cover this lane, but with level 6 being hit by Fearness as well, the grand challenge can be put down, so Fearness should be able to get the crash on this wave. Shouldn't be a big issue whatsoever. And now we start to see where LGD can move this pressure, because this is always how we have to kind of define a good team from a great team, is that yes, you've got all these advantages, you've got all these small little micro things that are giving you a lead in all these different lanes. How can you utilize it? One way you can utilize it is just by full-on engaging here. Level 4, Rise, gonna flash away, has to get himself out, loses both summoners, but when you move the Thresh into mid lane, he gets an Ahri, he's got himself the Spirit Rushes, he's not really going to be in much danger. Icon goes forward, but they had another one left as Icon not quite flashing just yet, but maybe he should have, because that's going to be a kill. LGD playing a perfect early game.
And I love how slow LGD actually took that skirmish in river, because they were waiting for JinJiao and Assum to come up, not really overcommitting. Yeji doing a great job as well of even baiting members into that play. And now LGD get the kill, they get the dragon, you're getting a ton of advantages on this bottom side as well. This is how LGD need to start at this game.
We'll have a look at the replay here, because it actually starts up in mid lane. It's just Yeji hits 6, and you can see what the idea is here from BLG. They want to try and burn him down, but without getting the Abscond abduct off straight away, they can't actually lock him up for long enough.
It's also just the fact that Wukong is only level 4. Like, you actually are so far behind on Khan, you don't have that damage to really bring to the table here in this situation. And especially in these early stages, like when you're looking at the level up gold, essentially how much it counts for in the early stages, is about 300 gold. So you're essentially missing out on like a long sword's worth of damage nearly in a lot of these situations because of the position that Khan's in. So that can make such a massive difference at these fights. And you can see it there, like just nothing they could actually do to scratch the surface of Yeji's health bar.
A great start here for LGD. Get themselves a dragon, get themselves up ahead on the gold curve as well. And you can see now with Shadow having access to level 6. Rise, I'm sorry, buddy. You're going to have a bit of a bad time. He's going to try and clear this wave as quickly as he can, but they can just turn off the turret, go for a full engage. And this is why you pick up the Thresh. Having that lantern available means you're able to keep him relatively safe.
And, oh, he's still in trouble.
No lantern, but this time around, Khan is already around. He's not got the Cyclone just yet. JinJiao is going to try and maybe get the bubble down, but only lands it on the decoy. They will trade it back, though, 1 for 1. This is now a bit of a bad situation for BLG. They've used a lot of resources, and they're on the wrong side of the map. Icon, with flash available, steals away the Volibear, lands the Abscond abduct, jumps down on the JinJiao, who actually flashes into the absolute epicenter of that ultimate from Icon. It ends up being a 2 for 1 trade. BLG fight back.
bot lane play was really well orchestrated by Ryze and Crisp. Crisp getting some great hooks. Ryze actually being able to pick up a kill on the back end of that as well was so incredibly crucial, because he's going to lose another wave to the tower here. And I can't even blame Ryze. Like, he is getting bullied galore by this LGD lineup, and he's playing this as best he can, but there's so little that you can do with the amount of pressure that LGD are throwing down on this bottom side.
Yeah, there's only so much you could do and only so many answers you can give it. But now with the transition up towards that top side, Shadow going to start off that Rift Herald. They should be able to get that one up for them. So despite the 2-for-1 trade going in favor of BLG, they don't really gain an objective from it. Assum trying to just go toe-to-toe with Crisp there, but needs to be careful in case a death sentence comes out. And that's a big old wave, so Culling not quite going to be in range here, as they do recognize there was a Wukong off into the sides of the stage, and they need to give this one up. So this is good reactions here from BLG.
A much needed goal back in favor for Ryze. I mean, we saw him sitting nearly 30 CS down, still about 20 down, but getting maybe 2 turret plates. Now, it doesn't look like he'll quite get it, but at least getting 1 turret plate is going to give him a significant amount of help in this matchup.
And he got the kill as well. Don't forget that Assum was not able to pick that one up himself. Let's have a look at the replay here, because like you said, they play this as well as they possibly can, because Ryze is just keeping himself away, and a great flay and actually a hook there from Crisp just keeps everything in the favor of BLG.
And that's the thing, it buys enough time for Ryze to be able to turn around the damage onto Assum, get the kill back, and enough time for Icon to show up. So Crisp really kind of being the hero of this play. Tries to make another one here, where he flashes for it to get the hook, but yeah, JinJiao, you definitely didn't need to flash in this situation. You were dead, done, and dusted.
Yeah, I don't think there was much else to really say about that one there. But LGD, they still got themselves the Rift Herald. They still have a Dragon as well. Second one will be spawning in a minute 30. It is a Cloud Dragon, so which means we'll have not a Cloud Rift, which is always nice to see. Teams tend to get a little bit more antsy around something like the Hex Dragon or the Infernal Soul, which we'll see which one is which. And now for BLG, you know, they're kind of back at this
the day
bot
that's
side.
in it, I'm feeling a bit of an ocean. You know, I'm feeling a little bit of an ocean. So
I said this to you.
We
were doing rehearsal, and I was like, like low key, kind of want to go to the beach just before we go live, but because I'm not too far away from it. You're like on the door of it. You could literally like walk it in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I should have gone for it. Maybe I should have gone for a quick swim beforehand. But I will say, I am lazy and getting up earlier than already our very early call time. Yeah, I'm just not into it. But Shadow here, definitely into getting on towards his Gromp, because this is like the 3rd time I think he's trying to steal it away. I was already gone 2 for 2 so far. We'll have to see if he can get it away from Khan once more. But Shadow
gonna try and maybe make something work. Don't forget, he's still a Volibear, so still very, very powerful. Shadow is chasing this one down, but not quite in a position to really capitalize anything from there. Yeji now finally getting the push in mid lane. These are 25 seconds till Dragon spawns. With the priority you have in bot and mid, this should be just another objective going over the side of LGD. It is good starts from LGD, but you would expect a little bit more considering the pressure they've had. They need to be careful with how they kind of work around the next, 10 to 15 minutes of the game.
I really want to see them use this Rift Herald on bot side. You can already see it in the pocket of Shadow there. If you can start to crack open this bot lane turret and unlock Assum and JinJiao so they can start roaming around the map, maybe look towards this top turret that's only sitting with 3 plates as well, then you can start to make things happen. But it looks like at the moment BLG considering fighting for this dragon, but I really don't think that's the play. I think you should be trying to maybe just match where the Rift Herald's going down and give dragon, because honestly you're just not in a position to fight this right now.
Well, speaking of fighting this, Fearness dropped down the grand challenge, and Ben was able to negate it as best he possibly could, so you don't know ultimate there. You do have access to the tidal wave for JinJiao, so good follow-up engage or just good disengage should you need it. Now LGD going to try and start off this dragon. You can see that BLG not wanting to let this one go. Bin actually going to have to try and back up. He was going up towards bot lane or towards the mid lane, but now has to back up all the way up to the top side. There is a ward here in the pit for the side of BLG, so they know exactly what's going down. They're not really in a position to steal it, but a tidal wave has been stolen, and that's going to separate everyone out. It only really lands in the edge. Shadow going to ult over the wall. Never mind, he's going to drop the Rift Herald over the wall and say, "No, Shelly, go! I cannot let you die here, and ends up whacking himself away. Actually, everyone from BLG backs away. There's going to be a great hook. They're going to pop him over the wall, follow it all the way there. They're going to try and get the Moonlight Vigil down as Assum has fallen down to the side of the Wukong. Rise will pick up his second kill of the game. This Rift Herald is just a spectator to what's going down, but now Yeji with the resets, actually no resets needed, doesn't even have access to the ultimate, will just pick up a double kill. They need to get this Rift Herald to crash into this wave, but it might be too late for plates.
It's just unfortunate for BLG. They stay that little bit too long the bot side and try to make the play happen. But again, Icon can't get control over this lane. Ahri will have full priority. And now they're getting that charge onto the bot lane turret. They won't be able to take the tower, which honestly is a bit of a win for BLG. But the amount of gold that they've just picked up here off this play is going to be spectacular for LGD. Great hook from Crisp here, especially when you look at the amount of shurikens that Rise can build up here as the fight goes on. But sticking around a bit too long, trying to see if they can get JinJiao as well, means that Shadow buying enough time in the 3v1 for Yeji to show up. And unfortunately, everything in the kitchen sink has been used against the Nami and the Lucian, so there's nothing left to try and beat the rest of LGD back.
Yeah, well, we're going to see a top lane gank coming out here, but Bin does not care. He's already taken one kill. The exhaust goes down on top of him. He flashes in. Bin is going ham.
Oh
Bin
my
is
God.
going sicko mode, and that's the Bin we saw at MSI.
And this is what we're talking about in this matchup. Fiora can do well in the early stages because she has so much max health damage coming through from her passive procs. But once you get to this point where you've got a Divine Sunder, where you've got a bit of damage under your belt, Bin is able to tear apart this top side. Yeah, gee, I don't know if you're going to be another victim for Bin here if you try and go that bit too far. I think, yeah, she realizes it as well.
And I mean, this is a bit of an issue now all of a sudden for the side of LGD. They need to try and stop this Jax, but I don't even know if they can. Shadow being taken very, very low there. They nearly got you able to burn him down, but while that was all happening, Icon was kind of playing PvE and saying, all right, guys, you guys got this. Don't worry about it. But Yeji on the flank of Days, looking to try and see if he can catch out Crisp or maybe even Khan. Doesn't quite have vision yet and doesn't know exactly who's around there, but right now, ooh, Rise flashes away, and oh, caught you out there. You got some more charges now here, but I say that Icon takes out the Lucian, and it's very scrappy all of a sudden. It's all over the map.
Yeah, G got the kill on the top side, and you get Assum down in the mid lane. So a bit all over the place here from both sides. But honestly, again, this is fine for BLG. This is a team that wants to scale for the later portion of the game. Wants to make sure that they're in a good spot when you look at things like this Jax, the Aphelios, even Wukong having these engages. And right now, we're dead even when it comes to gold. Pretty much even when it comes to turret pressure. And Bin, we're going to get a replay here, is just able to take over. And this is what I mean, right? You got to try and guess as Fearness when Bin is going to use the riposte, and it might be a grand challenge, but you got the Grandmaster's might on the opposite side for Bin. Flashes for it to get the kill, and I actually thought that Bin was just going to go for JinJiao here, but great flash to get onto Assum, catches him completely off guard, and just uses the fact that Assum had already engaged with the flash and didn't have that one available.
Well, we come back and Crisp has died. So, yeah, he died there.
Oh.
Fearness picks himself up a kill. And that's unfortunate there for BLG. Loses a little bit of that momentum, and with a minute and 15 until that dragon spawns, we can now see them maybe going up to Khan here. The Everfrost does land, but not quite able to land the charge afterwards. They get the tidal wave coming out here. They're not quite able to land the Orb of Deception. Icon also has to back himself away. I got to admit, yeah, G on this Ahri is looking clean.
I mean, he didn't really get to hit the Everfrost or the Charm, which is why Khan managed to escape away from that. So, at least for Khan, not bad managing to get away from that. We're getting the replay in the bottom right of Crisp going down. Rift Herald taken by Shadow while all these shenanigans were going on at the top side as well. So, again, an opportunity for LGD to try and open up things, but it does mean that they're a little bit late on resets. So, maybe we see BLG try and sneak away this dragon just as LGD are coming back off their bases.
2 items now already for Yeji. Got himself the Zonya's Hourglass, as we can now see Fearness going in for round 2 against Bin, but Bin very well adjusted to this one. Actually has himself a Glacial Shroud just to build himself up those resistances as well. The Frozen Heart, exceptional on something like the Jax, and now Crisp Needs to be a little bit careful. Going to find himself a fish as he goes in for the hook, but he's already taken very low. Has to flash away. You can see Fearness wants to get over this wall. It's TP from Icon going to be joining in the fight. The Cyclone has been used on the backside of this, but you've lost your Jax. There's a great Moonlight Vigil, but it doesn't really do much more than pepper the damage down. Shadow picks off Chris as Yeji tries to follow up with his jungler. Icon trying to run away with the Spirit Rush that he stole away. And now Khan not quite able to get onto Assum. Rise does back away as well. And BLG, it's just not quite clean enough. They're not quite getting the targets they need, and they're getting picked off by these Ahri charms.
And the problem was that BLG took that fight where Rise wasn't anywhere near the situation with Icon.
Scotland Duck does land, but the Everfrost is good to stop as any forward momentum. Now Icon gonna have to go gold, and the tidal wave just separates absolutely everybody else. He tries to get himself a nice fish and chips, but he's not able to get it, and that's gonna mean another kill going over. But it's not over just yet, because here comes back Bin.
I mean, I don't know. Are we actually going to go for round 15 of this fight? I don't understand why we're going again, but I mean, BLG now in a position. Shadow, I mean, they can't steal, so BLG should get Dragon here. Oh, Bin.
Bin goes in over the wall. They don't land the Death Sentence, the Charm, and the Everfrost. And Bin, he may have gone too far forward. He jumps back out and keeps himself alive. And that does stop the Dragon stacking. BLG pick up their first of the game.
So what a lot of people don't realize is that the Counter-Strike as well actually does give you reduced damage from abilities. And in that situation, that Counter-Strike was phenomenal there, because just about keeping him alive. But here, Khan engages, and this is what we're talking about with BLG going a bit too far forward. Rise isn't in the fight, and the Grand Challenge proccing in the middle of this fight heals everyone in LGD up so much. But then they start to separate that bit too far. BLG are able to find counter engages, get some poke at their own back, and eventually have to win the fight. So from BLG's perspective, if you just wait for Rise in a lot of these situations, you're actually going to be in a position to try and carry them. It's just a case of playing this fight more patient and not being that bit too quick off the starting line.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I love how you mentioned that about the Grand Challenge as well. Something that people don't realize is that, yes, if you land the Grand Challenge, or if the person dies before the Grand Challenge has been finished it off, it gives an AoE heal around that person's body. So that's one of the small little details that you don't really recognize, or you're not really probably 100% anticipating as you come into these things. It's a nice little detail there that ends up just adding so much value to LGD in that team fight. I will say, despite everything that went down, they're still only 2 kills up, but they are nearly 3,000 gold. Riftail going to be dropped here in the mid lane to try and crack that one open for LGD, and they need to keep this forward momentum. They're at a massive power spike right now, as we can see a hook coming in from Shadow, or onto Shadow, who ends up having to use the ultimate to try and get away. But as I was saying, massive power spike here. Assum and JinJiao on that Gale Force and Imperial Mandate. This is the time where they need to start to really force the issue onto BLG.
It's just the forcing the issue is the problem that we talked about in Champ Select. Like, Shadow has to try and run at people to make this fight start. You've got Crisp, who's going to be able to flame away. Khan, who's got the knock-up from the Cyclone to make sure he can't actually engage. So you're looking for, like, a random charm from Yeji or a JinJiao with the tidal wave, unless you can use the pressure that you have in lanes to look for picks, which is why LGD are starting to put themselves in towards this top side. Will spot out Rise, but he should be fine. Oh, Shadow just went away. Never mind, but I think overall, this is where I start to see the issues with LGD, is that trying to break a turtling BLG is going to be really hard to do.
Yeah, I was going to try and just trying to get rid of as many minions as possible, but we can have a look at the mini-map there. No vision really at all here for the side of BLG. They need to start establishing control again, because right now they just kind of lost everything. And right now, Crisp, I will say, has been caught out more times than he probably cares to think, as we can see now. There's Fearness going in. 4 levels up on Khan. That is a huge difference between the jungler and the top laner. And that means that Khan has to get himself out of dodge right now. Bin has to be very aware that this Fiora needs to be his opponent and his opponent alone.
And it should be. In every situation, Bin should be setting up against Fearness. I think Khan just getting a little bit caught out as he tried to get the Scuttle Crab there. Khan has been set pretty far behind from the early stages, so struggling a little bit when it comes towards being the kind of main engage tool for BLG. You can see he's worked up towards the Hex Drinker, but not exactly the tankiest of folks right now. So it's kind of a one and done situation for Khan, where he's going in, he will more than likely die, but it's about how much he can set up for Rise in the backline.
It's funny as well. We set up that for LGD. The success that they come from, or the success they get generally comes from the bot lane of Assum. And then, gotta admit, JinJiao and Assum were set up with a lane that can do exceptionally well. But 0-4, 0-2, not exactly a stellar start there for the LGD bot lane. But it's all been about the solo lanes and honestly the jungle as well for LGD. You know, we talked about Shadow for so long when he first came onto this roster because we were so hyped for him. Of course, the Mad Lions prospect, as we now see Bin going in on top of Fearness. Fearness should be able to get himself the riposte. Nicely done there by him, but this is kind of just down to the solo laners, and I feel like right now, it just feels like YeG stepping up very well.
And he has been doing relatively well on these more facilitator champions, as we said, like Lyssandra's, the Gallios. I think Ahri fits into that style a lot as well here with things like this Everfrost build and the potential for the charms. It's just a case of it now kind of relies a lot on YeG to continue that, to set up these fights and find these picks. And you can see that LGD are trying to establish that vision to look for picks in this top side, but BLG just doing well of counteracting a little bit of it, pushing LGD back out, not letting themselves get set up. And with 15 seconds now until this next dragon, we're going to have to see if LGD can find the key target of Rise in these fights, or if he's going to be able to go let loose, and you can have these great engages coming through from Khan that set up Icon, set up Bin at this next dragon.
For Icon, he's got himself 2 items, got the Crown of the Shattered Queen alongside that Zhonya's Hourglass, so a hell of a lot of survivability here onto the mid laner of BLG. The dragon has been started, but it is in the middle of a ward, so BLG are fully aware this is going on. The tidal wave comes out just to try and delay and to try and stop anyone from really joining in. They're doing a great job on it as well. Icon and Bin, the solo laners of BLG, are kind of getting 3v2'd right now. They need to get themselves out, both flashing over the wall, but you've lost Assum 0-5 now onto the LGD bot laner. You've lost a hell of a lot of resources here as LGD. I don't know if you can really fight this anymore.
Especially with Icon having the Volibear ult as well, going to give him a whole heap of health if he decides to go in. They're trying to look for the steal.
Oh, they're going to look for it there. Cleanse had to be used by Rise immediately as he did get charmed up. Fearness comes in, but way too late. BLG get themselves their second dragon, and it looked okay for LGD, but they were split on the call. It just felt like they were going for the dragon, and they weren't going for it. They kind of went on two fronts.
And you need to commit to one. But the problem is there's so much mobility on Bin and Icon as well, not even regarding their flashes. That trying to go towards Icon in that situation is never really going to work out for Fearness. I was really surprised to see him throw down the Grand Challenge at the Icon because he is running a very defensive build, having the Crown of the Shattered Queen, also having the stopwatch in the Zhonya's as well available. And you see he uses it perfectly, right? So Fearness throws down the Grand Challenge, Icon immediately moves towards the wall so we can't proc all the vitals, gets the CC, goes golden here, and that just sets up Crispin and Khan with a great combo here to finish off Assum, so Assum gets no help, and from that point forward, BLG are just in a terrible, LGD are in a terrible spot where they can't really go for an engage because they don't have the damage follow-up.
And it's exactly what you talked about in Champ Select. The Fiora is great, but they needed something to facilitate. They needed something to be able to start these fights to lock people down. The Fiora does great when you already have that, and yes, the charm can be good alongside the Q from the Volibear, but it's not exactly your big AoE or your consistently, set up CC that you would love to see. And Shadow sitting on top of a ward, but looks like BLG may be looking to try and make something work. They don't quite see where YeG is. They don't know that he was making his way up towards this top side to defend this, but with Baron now a very real possibility for both teams. Both AD carries the 2 items. YeG! Patience is a virtue, my friend, and that was very much what BLG were rewarded with.
I mean, great pick there. Now they get the top tower. They should be able to establish some control on this top side. Looks like LGD trying to collapse onto the top side of the map, though, which I don't know if it's your best bet here, honestly.
See what they want to go for. Crisp has not had an amazing time at the start of this game, but slowly but surely getting those big hooks down. You can see the mechanics coming out from this Thresh player, and all it takes is one hook, one death sentence to literally be just that, a death sentence to the side of LGD. Need to be very careful. I will say you are starting to see level 16s being hit up here for both the mid laners and the top laners, so we are starting to get to that late game, and honestly, we hyped up the bot lane, but they're nowhere near being there. It's Assum level 12, Rise level 13, like they're 2 items. They're very far away from being actually those big late game monsters we talk about.
I mean, Assum is never really going to be relevant in this game. I'm real sorry for you, bud, but 0-5 on the Lucian, having to stop off on the way for Lord Dominic's regard because of how much armor has already been built by Bane, Icon, Khan as well, getting it off his passive, and will start working up towards things like the Dead Stance and these sorts of things. So Honestly, I just think LGD's bot lane is just out of the equation. And now you're looking going, okay, well, where's your damage coming from? And it kind of has to be Fearness, as he's picked up just his third item there off the back of that. But in a team fight, a Fiora can do relatively well thanks to the changes that we've seen in the new durability patch, right? Like, because she gets passive maximum health damage off her vital procs, she's actually doing a significant amount of damage in fights. She's getting a decent amount of healing as well. And because she's more durable, she can, well, pick fights like this.
Yeah, well, there's the Everfrost coming down. The grand challenge has been met as they do not get the riposte off, but it does slow down Bin! And nicely done there by the side of LGD. BLG are going to think about going for the Baron, but honestly, it's so risky as well. You can't really risk getting caught out in that particular position. There isn't a dragon for another minute 30 or just under it, and now LGD, they've got to try and find something off of this. They've got themselves a map pressure lead. They need to make something use out of it.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunate for BLG, guns for Ryze just not great for Baron taking, so they decide to back away. But again, I don't know what else you can really get off that pick because, I mean, well, Ryze has Inferno. He just clears the waves pretty handily. Icon is actually in a pretty good spot to just clear out these waves too. I mean, you can, as you can see, establish some vision control around the Baron area. You can get your waves in order and sides, but it's not really going to be a game-changing pick there. Just that they just managed.
Fearness, he's 2 levels up here on the Icon. Icon has flash, will be able to steal away the grand challenge as well, but I don't know if that's the really one you want right now. He's going to get the TP coming in. That's going to be Bin making his way down bot side. Fearness does get the final proc off. He's going to try and parry to keep himself alive, and he does! The Fiora finally gets herself back into a situation to take this fight. Icon eventually falls down. Now the side of LGD can really put down this pressure. Look at JinJiao. He's going to try and find Ryze's Assum. Forces Ryze over the side with a flash, but can this fight really go in the favor of LGD? They finally take down the Monkey King and Wukong, and ends up being a 2-for-1 trade. The Fearness just goes a little bit too far forward.
Dragon will go the way of LGD as well, which is such a big win for this squad, managing to put themselves on towards that sole point. And I mean, unfortunate for BLG, you can see they were nearly able to turn this fight around, but because of how spread out it was, LGD are actually able to take the victory.
LGD, I need you to check that brush at the back of Dragon Pit. Just do it for me. It's been there for literally 10 minutes. But yeah, let's have a look at the way this one's set up. And again, it looks like BLG have an answer, but everyone's piling into the spot side.
Yeah, and again, Icon like buying time with that stopwatch, but the healing that comes through from the Grand Challenge for Fearness is so massive here. And because Icon actually doesn't get to proc it back, he isn't getting that healing. And I want to give a shout out to Ryze here, because Ryze actually does a ton of damage here. Like, gets a heap onto Fearness, the main damage component, dodges away from EG at the right time as well. And means that BLG are able to get at least a kill back. But unfortunately for Khan going in there, like, this Wukong is pretty damn squishy. Level 13, when you compare it to the 16, 17 of Fearness, and basically the same level as the AD carry, like, he's going to get popped.
Yeah, well, speaking of getting popped, Shadow has to flash away, did not have access to his ultimate there, so not going to have it there. And honestly, Bin can keep going forward. Still pop his ultimate to try and give him some extra resistances, but with Baron now live on the table, this is a bit of an opportunity here for the side of BLG. They might think they could take this fight because they've got themselves some chakrams.
Yeah, it looks like they're just going to bait it, though. Oh, as I say that, Khan and Ryze going to turn towards.
Fearness just getting himself hooked up, but he's pretty damn tanky at this point here. Another hook onto Fearness as he just gets the parlay down and tries to turn this one onto Bin. Bin just hasn't got the ultimate, so he hasn't got the resistances, and now Ryze in a lot of trouble. He hasn't got flash to reset this fight. Icon trying his best, but he's 1v3 and all alone. LGD taking ace out of nowhere as BLG stepped too far.
And LGD managed to find the engage that they desperately needed because BLG run into him. And there, LGD are able to strike with Fearness. Now, honestly, with 30-second death timers, I think they just end the game.
Yeah, Shadow tanking up the wave right now, saying, look, I can keep this alive. We can get this one going for ourselves. LGD finally finding themselves some decent moves here, turning off the towers as well. They've done it, Dagda, and this is a great start to the series for LGD.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like BLG were starting to turn the corner, get to that late game scaling, but LGD find the fight, and Fearness's Fiora looking spectacular in that last engagement.
Really, really was, and honestly, it just came off of the back of BLG just being a little bit too casual, honestly. I think it felt a little bit too like they were kind of saying, okay, look, fine, we'll go in. Bin kind of commits everything. Now he doesn't have his ultimate available to himself. Two great hooks from Chris, but again, it was onto Fearness, onto the Fiora, someone who, with that parry, is not going to be able to be taken down very, very easily. And yeah, it just kind of fell apart. You lost so many flashes and so many ways of getting out of the last fight on bot side. You just didn't have those resources this time.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, the attempt was made by Rise to try and carry that fight with the Infernum and trying to get as much damage off of the Chakrams, but there just wasn't really the front line. Khan was massively far behind thanks to the way the early game had gone, so he couldn't really set up as an engage tool for them because he was getting popped way too quickly. You're looking at the top side of the map as well, and Bin was trying his damnedest to be the engage tool, but some great bubbles and the ultimates from JinJiao were making it impossible for them to really function in team fights. And when you try to hard force the fights here, as a BLG, it gets a lot more difficult for you in that scenario.
Yeah, it really does. And for LGD, look, their bot lane is what we talked about in terms of being, we hyped up Assum. Assum was basically irrelevant all this game. I think he ended up with, I think 1-5 was his end score line or something. I'm sure we'll confirm it now in a second once we look at the end game screens. But this was a bit of a roller coaster, but again, it felt like it was LGD setting the pace. You can even see that there was LGD getting advantages. Yes, they were losing it, and then BLG were striking back, but it never felt like BLG were the ones dictating the pace of the game.
That's always going to be the case with a draft like this from BLG, though. Like, LGD had very early aggressive bot lane versus late game scaling. Yeah, G has full priority in mid lane over Icon, who's looking for more of a mid game spike where he's able to come online. Even with the jungle matchup, Shadow just on a much stronger champion in the early stages than Khan. You never get to dictate the pace of the game when you're in this situation as BLG. They had to rely on their mid to late game fights, and unfortunately it just never really came to fruition for them.
Yeah, and for LGD, great start to it, and we can have a kind of see what they were able to do. Honestly, I'm very, very impressed with Yeji. I think this Ahri, like you said, the facilitator pick that we hyped up in the draft, exceptionally set up for him, and really just that top half of the map, Yeji, Shadow, and Fearness, were just comboing so well. It didn't matter that their bot lane was a combined 2 and 7. It doesn't matter at this point because you're so far ahead on these picks. Shadow not dying, 4-0 and 8.
Yeah, I mean, Shadow looked absolutely spectacular on the way he played the early stages of the game on this Volibear, like consistently contesting that bot side because he got the push from Ash from JinJiao and G, trying to control it from that perspective. And I think that was the problem, is that Khan just fell so super far behind. And I wasn't the biggest fan of his build path.